They thought they got away with it. They smiled at your face, held your hand, whispered promises in the dark, and then turned around and betrayed everything you thought you had. They lied with ease. They cheated without remorse. And when you found out, they looked you in the eye and made you feel like the problem. They thought the universe wasn't watching. They were wrong. Because here's what every person who has ever been cheated on eventually discovers. Sometimes months later, sometimes years, the universe has a ledger. And every debt gets paid. Not always on your timeline, not always in the way you expected, but always, without exception, in full. Today, we're going to talk about why cheaters always pay. Not as wishful thinking, not as a comforting story we tell ourselves to feel better, but as a documented pattern, psychological, spiritual, and deeply human, that plays out with remarkable consistency across thousands of lives. This is the Karma Files. Part 1, the illusion of getting away with it. There is a moment, every cheater knows it, right after the betrayal, when they feel invincible. They got what they wanted, they had their cake and ate it too. They looked at the person they betrayed and thought, I won. But this feeling of invincibility is built on a foundation of sand. And here's why. The human psyche is not designed to carry secrets without cost. When we act in ways that contradict our deepest values, when we lie, when we betray, when we cause harm and pretend we didn't, the mind doesn't simply file that away and move on. It carries it, it processes it, and over time, it begins to exact a price. Psychologists call this cognitive dissonance, the mental discomfort that arises when our actions contradict our self-image. Most people, even those who cheat, have an internal narrative in which they are fundamentally a good person. Cheating creates a crack in that narrative, and cracks, if not addressed honestly, spread. The cheater has two options. They can acknowledge what they did, face the consequences, and do the hard work of genuine change, or they can double down, lie more, justify more, gaslight more, to paper over the crack. Most choose the second option, and in doing so, they begin a process of self-destruction that is slow, quiet, and absolutely inevitable. Part 2, what cheating actually does to the cheater. Let's talk about what the research actually shows about the long-term effects of infidelity on the person who cheated. Studies show that people who cheat in relationships report significantly higher levels of anxiety, shame, and self-loathing over time, even when they were never caught. The act of betrayal itself, regardless of external consequences, creates internal damage, but the psychological consequences are only the beginning. Cheaters, by definition, are people who are willing to lie to someone who trusts them completely. And here's the thing about becoming that kind of person. You can't compartmentalize it. The capacity for deception doesn't stay neatly contained in one relationship. It bleeds into everything. The person who cheats on their partner is also statistically more likely to lie to their employer, to their friends, to their business partners, because they have demonstrated to themselves at the deepest level that they are willing to betray trust when it serves them. And that knowledge changes how they move through the world. It makes them paranoid. It makes them suspicious of everyone around them because they know what people are capable of. They know what they themselves are capable of. This is one of the most profound karmic mechanisms at work. The cheater doesn't just damage their relationship, they damage their own capacity for trust. And a person who cannot trust, cannot love, cannot connect, cannot build anything lasting. They are condemned to a kind of emotional isolation that is, in its own way, a perfect punishment. Part 3, the new relationship. Why it never lasts. Perhaps the most consistent pattern in the karma of cheating is what happens to the relationship that was built on the betrayal. If the cheater left their partner for the person they cheated with, research is unambiguous. These relationships fail at dramatically higher rates than relationships that began honestly. People who had affairs with their eventual partners were 3 times more likely to be cheated on themselves in that new relationship. Why? Because the relationship was built on a lie? Because the person they chose proved, in the most definitive way possible, that they are willing to betray someone who loves them. And that person is now in a relationship with them. Think about that. The cheater chose someone who was willing to participate in betrayal. They built their new life on a foundation of deception, and they are now trusting that person, the person who helped them lie, to be faithful to them. The universe has a dark sense of humor, but beyond the statistics, there is something deeper at work. Relationships that begin in betrayal carry the weight of that betrayal. The excitement of the forbidden, the intensity that made the affair feel so alive, evaporates the moment the relationship becomes ordinary. The passion that was fueled by secrecy and transgression cannot survive the mundane reality of a real relationship. And so the cheater finds themselves in a relationship that feels hollow, that doesn't have the magic they thought it would. That is in many ways worse than what they left, because now they've destroyed everything, and they don't even have what they thought they were getting. Part 4. The moment the universe collects. Every person who has been betrayed and then watched from a distance has a story. A moment when they heard or saw or simply knew that karma had arrived. It might be the cheater who lost their job because their affair partner was a coworker and the relationship became a professional disaster. It might be the person who left their loyal partner for someone exciting, only to find themselves alone 3 years later, having burned every bridge. It might be the one who gaslit their partner into believing they were crazy, and then found themselves in a relationship where they were the one being gaslit. The form that karma takes is rarely what we expect. It is almost never a dramatic, cinematic moment of justice. It is usually quieter, more personal, more precise. It tends to arrive in exactly the area where the cheater thought they were most secure. The person who cheated because they wanted more excitement finds their life becomes relentlessly boring and empty. The person who cheated because they wanted to feel desired finds themselves in a relationship where they are ignored and taken for granted. The person who cheated because they were afraid of commitment finds themselves desperately wanting commitment and unable to find it. The universe doesn't punish randomly, it reflects. What you put out comes back to you, in a form that is perfectly calibrated to teach you exactly what you refuse to learn. Part 5. What happens to the person who was betrayed? Here is the part of the story that the cheater never sees coming. What happens to the person they betrayed? In the immediate aftermath of betrayal, the person who was cheated on is often devastated. Shattered, they question everything, their worth, their judgment, their ability to trust. They may spend months or years rebuilding, but here is what consistently happens to people who survive betrayal and do the work of healing. They become extraordinary. The pain of betrayal, when processed honestly, strips away illusions. It forces a kind of radical self-examination that most people never undertake. It demands that you look at your life clearly, what you want, what you deserve, what you will and will not accept. And it builds a resilience, a clarity, and a depth of character that cannot be acquired any other way. The person who was betrayed and survived, it knows something about themselves that they didn't know before. They are stronger than they thought. They can survive the unsurvivable, they can rebuild from nothing, and they know with absolute certainty what they will never again accept in their life. Meanwhile, the cheater is still running, still lying, still building their life on sand. The betrayed person builds on bedrock. Part 6. The spiritual dimension of karma. Across virtually every spiritual tradition in human history, Hindu Dharma, Buddhist karma, the Abrahamic concept of divine justice, the indigenous understanding of natural law, there is a consistent teaching. What we do to others, we ultimately do to ourselves. The harm we cause returns to us, not as punishment from an external judge, but as the natural consequence of the energy we put into the world. This is not superstition. It is in many ways a description of how human systems actually work. We are social creatures. Our lives are built on networks of relationship and trust. When we betray that trust, we damage the network, and we are part of the network. We cannot damage it without damaging ourselves. The cheater who believes they have escaped consequence has simply not yet seen the full arc of the story. Karma is not always fast, but it is always thorough. There is a phrase that appears in different forms across many traditions. The mills of God grind slowly, but they grind exceedingly fine. The universe is patient, it has time, and it never forgets what was done. Part 7. How to let go and trust the process. If you are someone who has been betrayed, this final section is for you. The hardest thing about being cheated on is not the betrayal itself. It is the waiting, the watching, the desperate desire to see justice arrive, and the fear that it never will. Here is what I want you to hear. Your job is not to be the instrument of karma. Your job is not to make sure they pay. Your job is to heal, to rebuild, to create a life so beautiful and so full that the betrayal becomes, eventually, the best thing that ever happened to you, because it freed you from someone who was never worthy of you. Let the universe handle the ledger. It is very good at its job. Focus your energy on yourself, on your healing, on the relationships and experiences and dreams that are waiting for you on the other side of this pain. Because here's the truth that every survivor of betrayal eventually discovers. The life that opens up after you leave a relationship built on lies is better than anything you could have had within it. The freedom, the clarity, the self-respect, the relationships built on genuine trust and mutual respect. The cheater chose to stay small. They chose deception over growth, comfort over integrity, the easy path over the right one. You didn't choose that. And because you didn't choose that, you get to build something real. The universe never forgets, and it never abandons those who choose to live with integrity. Trust the process. Your time is coming. Subscribe to Karma Files for more stories of justice, healing, and the unstoppable power of what goes around coming around. We'll see you in the next one. Part 8. The Patterns That Repeat. One of the most striking things about cheating is how predictable the patterns are. Not just the act itself, but everything that follows. The justifications, the rationalizations, the eventual unraveling. Researchers who study infidelity have identified what they call the cheater's script, a remarkably consistent set of narratives that people who cheat tell themselves and others to make sense of what they've done. The relationship was already over. My partner didn't understand me. It just happened. I didn't mean for anyone to get hurt. These scripts serve a purpose. They allow the cheater to maintain their self-image as a fundamentally good person while engaging in behavior that contradicts that image. But they come at a cost, because every time the cheater tells themselves one of these stories, they are practicing a form of self-deception. And self-deception, practiced consistently, erodes the capacity for honest self-awareness. The person who has been telling themselves the relationship was already over for long enough eventually loses the ability to accurately assess the state of their relationships. The person who has been telling themselves it just happened for long enough eventually loses the ability to take responsibility for their own choices. The self-deception that protected them from the consequences of their actions slowly becomes the lens through which they see everything, and it distorts everything it touches. This is karma working at the level of character. Not through external punishment, but through the gradual transformation of the person into someone who is less and less capable of the things that make life meaningful. Part 9. What real accountability looks like. There is a path out of this pattern. It is not easy, and most people who have cheated do not take it. But it exists, and it's worth naming. Real accountability for cheating looks like this: acknowledging the full extent of the harm caused without minimization or deflection. Taking responsibility for the choice, because it was always a choice, without hiding behind circumstances or the other person's failings. Making amends where possible, not to relieve your own guilt, but because the person you hurt deserves acknowledgement. And doing the genuine inner work to understand why you made the choice you made, so that you can make different choices in the future. This kind of accountability is rare. It requires a level of honesty with oneself that most people find genuinely painful. It requires sitting with the discomfort of knowing that you caused real harm to someone who trusted you, without the comfort of the scripts that normally soften that knowledge. But the people who do this work, who face what they did, honestly, and do the hard work of genuine change, are the ones who break the pattern. They are the ones who go on to build relationships that are actually real, actually trustworthy, actually capable of the depth and intimacy that human beings are made for. The karma of genuine accountability is not punishment, it is transformation. And transformation, however painful, is always a gift. Part 10, a final word. If you are someone who has been cheated on, I want to leave you with this. The person who betrayed you made a choice. A choice that said something about them, not about you. Your worth was not diminished by their decision to betray you. Your capacity to love, to trust, to build something real, none of that was damaged by what they did. It may feel that way right now, but it is not true. You are not less lovable because someone chose not to honor your love. You are not less trustworthy because someone chose to betray your trust. You are not less deserving of a real, honest, faithful relationship because someone chose to give you something false. The universe sees you. It sees what was done to you, and it is already at work, in ways you may not yet be able to see, moving the pieces of your life towards something better, something real, something that will make the betrayal, in retrospect, look like the beginning of the best chapter of your life. Hold on, keep going. The universe never forgets, and it never abandons those who choose to live with integrity. Subscribe to Karma Files. We'll see you in the next one.